It's actually here. Week 1, running back rankings, tier 1, led off with Saquon Barkley. You know I am rooting for my guy more than anyone. I took him in round 1 of the Flock League this Thursday night against the Dallas Cowboys. 200 yards minimum, lock it in, guaranteed. Now, obviously, that's a little bit of a joke, but what's not a joke is the Philadelphia Eagles currently project to be the number 1 offense in the NFL for week 1 going up against Dallas. You have a spread on this game about 7.5 points. So we saw last year that the Eagles, they want to run the ball, and in this game, Vegas is telling us that they're going to be able to. Now, I'm a little bit concerned about what you are going to have in the future weeks because it's a little bit of a tougher schedule going forward. But at least week 1, Saquon Barkley coming off the season where he averaged, 125 rushing yards per game, 22 points per game, and the perfect matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. I'm in. Now, the guy I have to play in week 1 of the Flock League is going to be Sal, who took Christian McCaffrey ahead of Saquon Barkley in our draft. And what's actually really funny right now is if you look at the Underdog pick'ems for week 1, there is no player that they have higher than Christian McCaffrey with the total yards mark. They are currently sitting with McCaffrey at a total of higher, lower, 106.5 yards. Going up against the Seattle Seahawks, the Niners are favored in this game. They should be able to run the ball. Brian Robinson may not be implemented right away. Isaac Guerrero is injured. So it looks like McCaffrey is going to be a straight up bell cow out the gate. I'm really hoping that he starts a little slower, but in reality, the projections say you just jam him in. Now, Bijan Robinson will be our next running back. You have the Atlanta Falcons with an implied team total of 22 points going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You do actually have the Bucs favored in this game, but realistically, that may not be the end of the world because Bijan Robinson is a capable receiving back. Right now, you look at Underdog, they have him higher, lower, 20.5 receiving yards, right? You're going to get targets out of the backfield. You start him. You start Jahmyr Gibbs. There's nothing to discuss with Gibbs outside of maybe when we're going to be talking about David Montgomery. The sports books right now are actually expecting that the Lions do take a step backwards from where they were a year ago. Obviously, it's a tough matchup going up against the Green Bay Packers with this in-division game. But y'all know I made rankings videos going back years and years and years. And last year, we actually had every single week sportsbooks projecting out the Detroit Lions to be a top 3 offense in the NFL. That's not the case. Right now, you have an implied team total at 22.5 points, which is still definitely above average, but not close to where they were a year ago. And then obviously, we're going to expect that Montgomery has a role here in this offense. Also, Underdog only has Jahmyr Gibbs, higher, lower, 14.25 points. I think they're maybe a little bit scared of the matchup. But if you thought that was crazy and wanted to go take the higher, I'm not going to fault you for it. You can find the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description and comment section. Underdog is available in almost every single state. And this week, they are doing the biggest promo week I have ever seen. First off, if you use code FLOCK, you are going to be getting $50 added to your account after you play your first 5. Then they have a free Saquon Barkley pick, higher, lower, half a total yard for the Thursday night game. You have a 50% profit boost token for the Thursday night game, 50% profit boost token for the Friday night game, 100% profit boost token for the Sunday slate, and additional promos on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Plus, they're allowing us to do our own special Flock pick and pack as well for that Thursday night game where we're taking Saquon Barkley to score a touchdown. And if you got the flockfantasy.com season pass, go fill out the Google form that we have posted on the site, and you're going to get an additional $10 added into your Underdog account. So really, you just got to deposit $10, and then immediately you'll have like $60 in your account where you can tail the Flock pick and packs with us all year long. Just make sure you use code FLOCK with the link in the description and comment section. Now, tier 2, we are going to be going with Chase Brown. You have the Cincinnati Bengals projecting to be a top 3 offense in the league this week with a 26.5 point implied team total going up against the Cleveland Browns. They should be able to run the ball consistently, even if Cincinnati has started slow over the past few years. They did play pretty much every single starter in the preseason to make sure that they were going to be ready for week 1. Then going over to the next running back in this tier, maybe you're expecting Derrick Henry, but honestly, I'm going to go with Bucky Irving. You have a 24.5 point total for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. Rashad White is also banged up. If Rashad White misses this game, Bucky Irving would go to actually be a tier 1 running back for me, where you have a super safe floor with the receiving role. And we saw in the preseason that with no Rashad White, they were willing to give him every single snap with the starters. Jonathan Taylor will be our next back. Jonathan Taylor is going to be going up against the Miami Dolphins. The spread on this game is only about 1.5. It should be close. Again, I do like Jonathan Taylor in this game environment where you have Daniel Jones under center, so the check down should be there, and we're not too worried about vultures at the goal line. Josh Jacobs will actually be our next running back. The Packers are favored ahead of the Detroit Lions here by about 2.5 points, and you have an implied team total of 25. Plus, you have Marshawn Lloyd on the IR. So this is going to set up where Josh Jacobs can just very easily be a 3-down running back and hammer it over and over and over again against this Lions defense. Super pumped to start Jacobs. Derrick Henry, yes, is maybe a little bit lower than where you would like him to be. And I completely understand you going down there and spamming the comment section and saying, Mason, you're an idiot. You're always too low on Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry should easily be RB4. My hesitation with it is we go back to last season and you look at the games that the Baltimore Ravens lost, and Derrick Henry actually was not out there on the field much. Derrick Henry would play fewer than 50% of the snaps just because he can't run routes. He's not a receiving back. Derrick Henry's the running back that you want if the Baltimore Ravens are going to win the game, and they are just going to ask him to run the ball over and over and over again in the second half when the defense is tired. Here you actually have the Buffalo Bills favored in this game over the Baltimore Ravens. And I think you'll probably see more passing volume than you normally would in Baltimore this week, but you still clearly start Derrick Henry. Ashton Jeanty is going to be our next play going up against the New England Patriots. New England is favored in this game, and y'all will see a consistent trend with my week 1 rankings. Typically, my stance with rookies will be, you know what? You don't get extra points for starting them on their breakout. You don't get extra points for being the dude that called the breakout and put them into their lineup week 1. Realistically, you could see it before you believe it, and then you can move him into your lineup the following week. Jeanty is one of the very few outliers with that, where Jeanty should realistically immediately have 80+% of the opportunities in this offense. Now, going down to our next tier, we are going to have Kyren Williams. So obviously, we've talked about this all offseason, but over the past few years, Kyren Williams has been one of the very few true 3-down running backs in the NFL, where he is sitting there with over an 80% snap rate. Like, the number one bell cow in the NFL is the smallest Kyren Williams. They did give us reports saying that Blake Corum's going to be more involved this year. I don't know if you want to believe that or not. This matchup against Houston Texans projects out to be somewhat of a close game. It'll be very interesting to see how healthy Matthew Stafford really is. Devon Achane will be our next running back. Achane practiced on Monday. He's going to practice on Tuesday. They told us last week that he was going to be good to go for week 1, and they're telling us this week that he's good to go for week 1. This matchup against the Indianapolis Colts is kind of whatever. Achane typically is going to be much higher in my rankings through the rest of the season, but I think the first week coming back from the calf injury, we can be a little bit hesitant, but you're still ultimately going to start him. James Conner will be my next running back. Now, y'all know I actually had a pretty hard fade on James Conner in drafts this year. Like, he's one of my least drafted running backs on Underdog. Trey Benson's one of my most drafted running backs. I took Conner in the Flock League last year at a really cheap cost. He was a little bit too rich for me this year, another year older. But week 1, none of the red flags that I have for James Conner are going to become true. Like, the only thing I'm concerned with Conner is that he'll phase out as the season goes on, given the older back with the wear on his tires. And at the same time, you're looking at the fact that we have the long injury history for James Conner. But he's fully healthy as of today, and you're going up against the New Orleans Saints, and you are heavy, heavy favorites. So the expectation should be the Arizona Cardinals go out there and they run the ball a ton. James Conner should be a 3-down running back at least the first week of the season, probably the first month of the year. Now, selfishly, I'm kind of hoping we see some Trey Benson, but I don't think you can rely on that week 1. Kamara will be our next running back. Implied team total of 18.5 points. The Saints project out to be a bottom 3 offense in the league this week. But the fact of the matter is, the Saints are going to project to be a bottom 3 offense in the NFL every single week of the season. It doesn't matter. I mean, I guess the only time it won't happen is if they get to play the Cincinnati Bengals this year. So if you drafted Alvin Kamara, you're not ever going through and saying, oh, it's not a good week for the New Orleans Saints. It's never a good week for the New Orleans Saints. You drafted him because you're hoping that he's going to get the receiving involvement in a game where the Saints are, I think 5.5 point dogs. Now, James Cook will be our next running back. Now, with James Cook, maybe you think the contract situation starts him off a little bit slow this year and you get a little bit of Ray Davis. Ultimately, I'm not going to be that concerned with his usage. This should be the highest scoring game of the week. Again, you have like an over-under of 51 points here for Baltimore and Buffalo. But I do think that they're going to ask the quarterbacks to do a lot, and I think that this does have shootout potential. Chuba Hubbard will be our next running back. it is surprising to see the over-under that you have in this Panthers-Jags game. I guess both these defenses are no bueno. At least that's what sportsbooks are telling me. Obviously, I'm going to trust sportsbooks when it comes to defensive matchups more than I'll trust myself, because the over-under on this game is crazy high. The Panthers have almost a 22-point implied team total. They bring in Trevor Etienne. They bring in Rico Dowdle, but we haven't seen anything up until this point to tell us that we really should be concerned about the Chuba Hubbard workload, where Hubbard was just a true 3-down running back last season. Now, our next tier is going to be led off with Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker had like a lingering foot injury in the training camp, but it seems like he's 100% good to go week 1. Full systems go. The only difficulty is it's a tougher matchup going up against the Niners. Like right now, you have an implied team total of 21 points. The Niners are actually favored in this game by about 2.5. So the concern would be that the Seattle Seahawks maybe implode their first week with Sam Darnold under center, but obviously it's going to be one of the top offenses to be on the lookout for to see how it is with the new coaching staff and with Darnold. Amari Hampton will be our next running back. I know we just talked about with Ashton Genty that typically we want to see it before we believe it with these RBs. However, I don't know if that matters for Amari Hampton. Again, a true elite level prospect. He was a 3-down bell cow in college. He has the size to be a bell cow at the NFL level. He has the receiving skill set to stay on the field on third downs. He was an elite athlete at the NFL Combine. He got round 1 NFL draft capital. And Najee Harris wasn't with the team all of training camp. Najee Harris may have a glass eye right now for all we know. Now, they are saying that Najee's just got cleared for contact this Monday, and Najee is kind of prepping to play the game on Friday. But realistically speaking, I don't know how large of a role we can expect Najee Harris to actually have. Now, our next running back is going to be Breece Hall. With Breece, I think you have to start him. Like, I would say all these running backs kind of up until this point are players that you have to get into your starting lineup. Now, with that being said, with Breece Hall, I am going to be concerned. I think he will be the lead in a committee. He is an extremely talented RB. But if we are looking at this game environment in particular, according to sportsbooks, this Jets-Steelers game is supposed to be the lowest scoring game of the week. Currently, the Jets have an implied team total of 17.5 points. I believe this puts them tied with the Tennessee Titans, projected to be the worst offense in the week. And then we go ahead and we look at what you have with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are supposed to score like 20 points. The over-under of this game is like 37.5. So Breece may just be a committee running back in one of the worst game environments on the entire slate. Now, Tony Pollard will be our next back. With Tony Pollard, you have the same concerns with Breece Hall in terms of the offensive environment. You have a 17.5 point implied team total. Toughest matchup you could ask for going up against the Denver Broncos. And right now, sportsbooks are putting the Tennessee Titans alongside with the Jets, projected to be the lowest scoring offense in the NFL this week. Now, the benefit that you get with Pollard is you have no Tajay Spears. So realistically, Pollard should set up to just be a very safe play with the 3-down workload. But the reason I'm going to have Breece ahead of him, even if Breece will probably have fewer touches, is I just think at this point in their respective careers, Breece is the more athletic back, Breece is the more talented back, and if we're going to get a big play, I would expect it to come from Breece Hall, not Tony Pollard. But you can go Pollard over Breece if you want. Pollard's going to be the volume guy. Breece is going to be the hopeful big play guy. DeAndre Swift will be our next RB. Shouldn't be the easiest matchup in the world going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Like here against the Vikings, you actually do have a 21 point implied team total. You have the Bears actually 1.5 point dogs. The thing with DeAndre Swift that you have going for him is we have not heard a peep about Roschon Johnson all offseason. Kyle Monangai got banged up. Like if we're talking about Kyle Monangai possibly taking work from you week 1, you know that you have no competition whatsoever. Now, maybe, just maybe, the Chicago Bears start off a little bit slow. Their first game with Ben Johnson, their first game with Loveland, their first game with a lot of these offensive line pieces. But again, you actually had the Bears as a bottom 5 scoring offense in the NFL last year, and sportsbooks are projecting them to be the 16th highest scoring offense in the league this year. So they are projected to go from horrendous to dead average, which is the current best jump that we have with projections from last year to this year. And it will be very interesting to watch this game. Trevion Henderson will be our next running back. Now, I have been answering start-sit questions every single night in the live stream this week. And I'm going to be answering start-sit questions, trade questions, roster reviews every single day on the live stream until Christmas. I promise you that. But I have not answered more start-sit questions about any player other than like Trevion Henderson at running back and Igbuka at wide receiver. And with Henderson, I wanted to put him in the same boat as like Genty and Amari and Hampton as like, you know what? You got to start this guy kind of regardless, especially with what we saw in the preseason. Top level prospect, got great draft capital, should be an improved offense, great matchup against the Raiders. But I am concerned. If I go out there and if I rank Trevion Henderson as like a must start running back, and then Ramadre does the annoying thing where he just takes work here, which nobody wants to see, I'm going to feel horrible. So I think like Trevion's a borderline flex play. If you didn't have the best running back room, you're probably starting Trevion Henderson. But I think Henderson kind of falls in that class of rookies where it's like, you know what? I'm so excited about this dude rest of season. But week 1, you don't have to get him in your lineup. But it's a good matchup against the Raiders. 23-point implied team total, and the Patriots are favored. Isaiah Pacheco will be our next back. With Isaiah Pacheco, he was horrendous last year. Obviously, he had a significant injury. He came back from the significant injury. I don't know how healthy he was. If he is fully healthy and he gets back to who he was 2 years ago, Isaiah Pacheco will probably exceed expectations for where we're ranking him at RB23. But very similar to with like these other running backs that I'm talking about that have like some question marks, I think you can see it before you believe it with Isaiah Pacheco. J.K. Dobbins will be our next running back. With Dobbins, obviously, I am ranking him as if he is the starting running back over R.J. Harvey. Am I 100% guaranteed that that's going to happen? No. I think long-term, R.J. Harvey is definitely the dude. But I would not be playing R.J. Harvey week 1. No way in hell. If I had to choose somebody in this Denver Broncos backfield, it would be the veteran. It would be the guy that had the usage all of training camp there with the starters. Now, because I think there's a possibility that you end up getting Harvey with a slightly larger role than you would guess, I'm fine like taking a break, seeing what this split is, and then acting on it the following week. But it's a really good matchup against the Tennessee Titans where you have a massive spread on this game, and the Broncos project to be a top 5 offense in the NFL in points scored this week. Aaron Jones will be our next running back. With Aaron Jones, good offense, you're favored over the Bears. But ultimately, at the end of the day, again, this is another one of those committee backfields where I'm going to project Aaron Jones to be the guy, but I would feel a lot more comfortable if we could just wait and see what the split really is with Jordan Mason. Because there has been a ton of smoke coming out of Minnesota saying, you know what, Jordan Mason is going to be the goal line back. Jordan Mason's going to be the short area running back. And that may be true. It may not. I think we're going to get a lot more information about it after week 1. I'm going over and looking at our next guy with Tyrone Tracy. Tracy's going to be the starting running back over Cam Skattebo early in the season. Don't get it twisted. Now, Cam Skattebo, I think, is very interesting for later in the year. And Cam Skattebo is someone I'm currently stashing on the bench in my own league. But Tracy had all the reps with the starters when Skattebo had the hamstring. He was already the guy in the building with this coaching staff last year. My thing is, I think Scat may have some work week 1, even if it's not massive. And you have the Giants projected out to be a bottom 5 offense in the league this week, going up against the Commanders with a massive spread on this game where we assume that the Giants probably have to throw the ball in the second half. And Tracy hasn't established himself as a running back that's going to be out there and picking up a ton of points in the 2-minute drill. Now, Jaylen Warren will be our next running back. Jaylen Warren also is going to be a starting running back week 1. Like, do not play Caleb Johnson, whatever you do. If you look at my rest of season rankings, yeah, I'll have Caleb ahead of Jaylen Warren, but Jaylen Warren's going to be the guy week 1. My issue with this is, again, going back to what we were talking about with Breece Hall, this will be the lowest scoring game in the league this week, or at least that's what sportsbooks are saying. You have an over-under of like 37.5 points in this game. We also look at Caleb Johnson and go, well, yeah, like I don't expect that Caleb Johnson is the starter here. I would expect that Caleb Johnson has some work. And we even saw Kenneth Gainwell get some work in the preseason. So this could potentially be like a sneaky 3-man running back by committee in a garbage offense and a garbage game environment, but Warren is the starter. Now, David Montgomery will be our next back. If we are looking at David Montgomery, again, the Lions project to be a much worse offense, at least this week, than they typically did in weeks last year. I think some of this has to do with the Packers. They have a great defense at this point, right? So you actually have the Packers favored in this game. The offensive line looks a little bit worse for the Lions. I know a lot of people are saying with the new offensive coordinator, they're actually going to lean a little bit more on Jahmyr Gibbs, and this will be less of a committee, but who knows? We'll end up seeing week 1. Our next running back will be RJ Harvey. I expect the Denver Broncos to be able to run the ball a ton. Again, I definitely prefer J.K. Dobbins. Rest of season, give me RJ Harvey. But maybe we get some Harvey in the second half of this game if it gets away from him with a large spread. And again, because there's such a large spread, I'd imagine we get a decent amount of rush attempts for both running backs in the Denver backfield. But maybe I'm wrong, and maybe we just actually see Sean Payton give everything to Dobbins out the gate. Our next running back's going to be like Austin Eckler, Travis Etienne. I really don't know what to do with either back. I think as it projects out right now, Austin Eckler's in a 3-man running back by committee, and I don't know how much juice Austin Eckler has left. Like, realistically speaking, if we are looking at this, it's a really good game environment typically for a running back where you have a massive spread and the Commanders project to score a ton of points. I'm not going to trust Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt week 1. I don't really want to trust Austin Eckler week 1. But I think from like a floor perspective, if Austin Eckler went out there week 1 and gave you 3 fantasy points, I would be shocked. If Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt went out there week 1 and gave you 3 fantasy points, honestly, I wouldn't be that surprised. So I think Eckler gives you a relatively high floor. We know he's the veteran. We know he's going to get work in this backfield. The question is, how much do you get for JCM? How much do you get for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt? Travis Etienne will be our next back. Great game environment against the Carolina Panthers. Again, this is supposed to be a sneaky, really high-scoring game between the Jags and Panthers, funny enough. Looking at Travis Etienne, I have him in the Flock League. I think I'm going to be playing Stephon Diggs over him. Because the fact of the matter is, you look at a lot of these projections from sportsbooks right now, and they're telling us that like Tank Bigsby is going to have a larger role than Etienne week 1. Now, technically, Etienne's listed as the starter on the depth chart. And the reason I'm going to rank Etienne ahead of Tank Bigsby is because Etienne has a receiving skill set that Bigsby simply doesn't. But I'm not going to fault you at all if you wanted to like bench both players. Like I'm benching Javonte. Javante's a starting running back for Dallas. But you have a horrible matchup going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, a massive spread on this game where I don't know if the Cowboys are going to be able to run the ball. Jerome Ford, maybe you can talk me into moving him up these ranks. The thing with Ford is typically we're going to project the Cleveland Browns to be either the worst or the second worst offense in the league. However, they get to play the Cincinnati Bengals this week. So surprisingly, the Cleveland Browns project to score more points this week than the Pittsburgh Steelers, than the New York Jets, than the Dallas Cowboys. Like they project to score more points than the Dallas Cowboys. They project to score more points than the Giants. They project to score more points than the Saints. They project to score more points than the Raiders. So it's surprisingly okay, but I don't know who's going to be the starting running back between Ford and Dylan Sampson. And even when Ford was the starting running back for the Cleveland Browns last year, he wasn't really anything more than like a bye-week fill-in. Now, I also have Nick Chubb in the Flock League. I'm also going to be benching Nick Chubb. If you are desperate, you can get him in there. He would be my bet to be the starting running back for the Houston Texans week 1. But Woody Marks will probably have the receiving role. Not only will Woody Marks have the receiving role, but also I would imagine that they could potentially split this with Dameon Pierce as well. Tank Bigsby will be our next back. Tank Bigsby going up against the Carolina Panthers could very easily be the starter over Travis Etienne. Again, he doesn't have the same receiving skill set that Etienne does, though. Ramondre Stevenson, even if Ramondre is the starter, I would expect that Trevion gets everything as a receiver. And we saw Ramondre Stevenson with no Trevion Henderson in his backfield last year. And Ramondre was legitimate booty cheeks. I tried getting this guy in my starting lineup like every other week in the Flock League. My RB2 was not cutting in it. And he was just garbage. So I don't see why all of a sudden he's going to figure it out now that you had a really capable running back in his own backfield. Jordan Mason will be our next back. With Jordan Mason, maybe he has the goal line role from Aaron Jones capping his ceiling. But again, I want to see it before I believe it. Dylan Sampson, he could be the starting running back in Cleveland, but he's a day 3 NFL draft pick on the Cleveland Browns. No way in hell I start him week 1. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, day 3 NFL draft pick. That's possibly in a 3-man running back by committee. He's on my bench in the Flock League. No way in hell I start him week 1. Caleb Johnson, again, horrible game environment. I think Jalen Warren's the starter, but the reality of the situation is I probably don't want to start any of these running backs. And then Zach Charbonnet, Charbonnet is very clear. He's the elite premium handcuff running back if you have a Kenneth Walker injury. But when Walker's played, Charbonnet hasn't been usable. So I think we kind of know who he is. And then the question marks, I'm going to put it here at the very bottom. Ollie Gordon, obviously, you would jam him in if you had no Devon Achane, but looks like Achane's trending towards playing. Trey Benson, premium handcuff, kind of like Zach Charbonnet, just not proven like Charbonnet is. Braylon Allen, I also think kind of premium handcuff, similar to Zach Charbonnet, not proven like him. Chris Rodriguez, probably pick him up off the waiver wire, see what happens week 1. He could be the starter in Washington. No way you start him. Rachaad White dealing with an injury right now. If Rachaad White's good to go, I think you could actually move him possibly up to the Jordan Mason range. Rico Dowdle, we'll see what the role is. Cam Scatterby, we'll see what the role is. Miles Sanders, we'll see what the role is. But realistically, like anybody outside the first like 28 or so running backs, I would really not want to start. You're inside the top 28 RBs on this list. Cool. Get them in. I think you have some kind of baseline floor. But outside of that, do whatever you can to avoid those guys. If you're choosing between like, say, Nick Chubb and a wide receiver for your flex spot, you probably want to go with the receiver. But that's all I got for you. Again, we have a flock pick'em pack on Underdog Fantasy. Pickens to have fewer than 5 receptions. Dak Prescott to have 230 or more passing yards. Saquon Barkley to score a touchdown. And they boosted that for us to be a 5X for y'all to be able to tail that. And again, since it's boosted, there is a $25 cap on it. But there are additional promos on Underdog as well, including a Saquon Barkley free gimme pick, more than less than half total yard for Thursday night. And on top of that, you'll get $50 added to your account after you play your first $5 with promo code FLOCK. The link to Underdog is going to be in the description and comment section. I would love for you to have some fun with us there, and I hope I get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.